What up, y'all? Mr. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor June Giraffe. Welcome to the final episode of the Mega Colony Friday for 2020. Because you already know the set is done, the set is over with. We didn't really finish as strong as we should have, but it's okay. We're about to go through all the cards that's been coming out. The ones that came out today, also the ones that came out, what was it, Wednesday? Yeah. So we're also gonna go over the ones that came out Wednesday and all this other stuff. So before I start, I like to tell a few things that I'm going to be doing. Now that Mega Colony Friday is over, going back to doing my regular podcast, which is the Mega Colony Trap House podcast, where I will admit it talks a little bit more to Mega Colony. It actually talks about like the game in general and some of the ideas that I have and stuff like that, and even unpopular opinions. So check that out. I was originally trying to do it every Wednesday, but for some reason, every time I try to schedule something else always comes up, which makes me either delay or procrastinate it. So I'm going to say that every week, the Mega Colony Trap House podcast is going to come out either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, starting next week, and everything else like that. But just because I'm done with Mega Colony Friday doesn't necessarily mean I'm done with the Mega Colony content in general. What I'm going to be doing, I do have a few videos in general. I want to talk about, the first thing I want to talk about, and all of this is probably not going to be in order, by the way, but one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the overall condition of all of the versions of Mega Colony that you can play with. So the Gridora build, the machining build, the Gun and Kaleo build, in both standard and premium format. Also wanted to make another video talk about the stuff that we kind of sort of should have got, but not really. And then another one I wanted to do was a top 10 video where it's supposed to be the top 10 grade 3s that can go with Gridora outside of Intimidating Immune Dark Phase. So that's going to be a thing as well. And overall, I feel like that there's going to be one more. I feel like I want to do one when it comes to matchups though, but I'm kind of good at that and not really good at that at the same time. So that's going to be a 50-50 right there. But enough with all that. We got a lot of stuff to go over, so I'm definitely going to be talking about that. We got some machining cards that came out today, and we got like a few that came out Wednesday. So we're just going to keep going through that. A lot of these are very questionable. We did get a grade 2 vanilla. Sadly, it's not like the base critical 2 one, but it's alright. Anyway, the first one we're going to be going over is called Shedding Mutant Kill Thrash. This is the grade 3 that doesn't come with a marker. Alright, so Vanguard Circle calls Counterblast 2 and rest this unit. And during your opponent's next stand phase, your opponent cannot stand his or her rear guards. Alright, so everybody has been questioning this unit. I have been questioning this unit because I want to know what is the point of this particular card. Now, at least with the card that we got in Premium Collection 2020, there was a reason into using that particular card. Despite it not really being that good, there is a clear reason and a clear motive onto using that card. This card turns a whole 360 and questions everything about you playing Mega Colony as a whole. And I do not understand why. I don't understand what was the point of this card. I don't think anybody understands why this card even exists. Now, if it was a rear guard skill, yes, I can completely understand. This definitely should have been a rear guard skill, but no, it's a Vanguard skill. Hopefully, like Bushiroad realizes the mistake and was be like, oh yeah, we're gonna errata it so it's a rear guard skill instead of a Vanguard skill. I highly doubt that they'll do that, but I think if I had to guess why this card exists is one simple reason. If you think about it, when the cradle mechanic, you were searching out and deck thinning a lot, which means that if you don't kill your opponent off at the right particular time, then more likely you're just going to die by deck out. And sometimes dying by deck out is the worst case scenario and it's the worst thing possible because you could have killed your opponent off, but they played so much good defense that you couldn't really, do anything about it. So let's say you have maybe 3 cards left in deck and you're trying not to, oh, or not 3 deck, like 2 cards left in deck, and you're trying not to deck out and stuff like that. You use this card's ability, you counterblast 2, rest the unit, and you don't have to drive check. You lose an attack, but you don't have to drive check, and you don't deck yourself out. I feel like that this card was made in particular for that reason, but it's still not worth it. Even if you were to go into that worst case scenario, it's not worth it, because even if that was the case, you still is only going to run this card at 1, and you still is going to have the possibility of getting a hit into like the damage zone or anything else like that, or if you're going in a mirror match, getting milled. So overall, 1 out of 5. This card is trash. This card should not exist. I don't know why it exists. Moving on. We're going on to the grade 1, which is pretty interesting. It's called Turbulent Signal. In Act Rearguard Circle, cost Counterblast 1 and retire this unit. Put the top card of your opponent's deck into the drop zone. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards without any cradle marker for each grade of that card and put a cradle marker on it. Okay, so this card itself is not that bad. It definitely helps with using the cradle mechanic and gunning Kaleo, because let's be real, most of the cradle mechanic cards, they are pretty universal, which is a good thing. But I feel like Gridora and Intimidate Immune Darkface alone makes the cradle mechanic a lot more consistent compared to the other cards, because the other cards have like a lot of other abilities for it as well, and a lot of conditions as well, so that's a thing. But with this, you're promoting the mill mechanic, because there are going to be some players who want to use both the mill mechanic and the cradle mechanic in one particular deck, and this grade 1 definitely promotes it. Now, because of that, is it a good card? I feel like it's 50-50, because you already know your opponent mills that grade 0, you ain't getting shit. I feel like that if this card was a Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit, I definitely feel like it would have his way in the deck, and it would actually be pretty worth it, because even though your opponent will mill the 0, you'll still have a counterblast. So at the end of the day, I definitely feel like that this unit is kind of sort of worth it if you're running the gunning Kaleo build. But if you're running it in Gridora, there's no point in doing it. There's no point in running it Gridora. I do feel like that you could technically do that. Like if you're running, like, let's say Dust Speed for a prime example, like you can put like Dust Speed in the deck, and then it'll be like, yo, you're running like Gridora and Dust Speed, which will be pretty interesting. And then you can also run this card, and you'll have like a little bit more consistency when it comes to the milling and when it comes to the cradle mechanic as well. So that's the thing. Honestly, at the end of the day, this card is still pretty decent. It does promote the mill mechanic. It does promote the cradle mechanic. So I would definitely give this card like a 3 out of 5 out of 5. So, and I also love the artwork. The artwork's funny as hell. He got like the whole cap in the back. Dude's going all the way back with the 90s throwback and stuff like that. Over there looking like Super Mario 3 and shit. But man, I like the card. The card's actually pretty good. Last but not least, we do have 3 machining cards, because I did notice the other day that Megacolony was getting the the last triple R slot. They also got another double rare slot. And despite that, it's not my boy Giraffe because I thought that was going to be a thing, but it wasn't. Hopefully, when we get Megacolony support next year, we do get Giraffe because your boy Giraffe needs some love. And I also thought that it would have actually been allocated in probably one of the other grade twos. I think the grade two that had like the 10K thing, I thought it was gonna be those two. But no, instead we got some machining stuff. To be fair, I should have saw this coming because we didn't really get any machining stuff all this whole time. So honestly, I should have saw this coming. Anyway, we got some 3 interesting ones. We got a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3. So the grade 1 is a common, and his name is Machining Cyberster. So, auto rearguard circle. When rested by your card's ability, look at 3 cards on the top of your deck, call up the 1 card with machining this card name from among them to rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. It is a hard once per turn. So you don't waste any counterblast, you don't waste any soul blast. It can be activated by calling it out with Stag Beetle. It can be activated by using machining ornamental skill, and it can definitely be activated by a couple of other stuff here and there. Now, this card is actually pretty good. I will admit that. It's sad that it is a hard once per turn, but I guess that's so the game won't completely break. And honestly, this works pretty good if you're playing this in a premium machining deck. And I kind of feel like that's the theme of this. I feel like the theme of like all 3 of these cards wasn't to promote the machining mechanic in standard. It was more to promote the machining mechanic in premium. Now, I could be completely wrong. And the reason why I have this theory is because, let's be real, outside of ornamental, all the machining cards were universal. Hornet, you didn't have to have a machining Vanguard. Mantis, you didn't have to have a machining Vanguard or machining Rearguard. Stag Beetle could call out anybody compared to his original ability, where it can only call out machining cards. Stag Beetle stood any card regardless if it was machining or not. You have Centipede that, it restood itself. You didn't have to have machining Vanguard or Rearguard or anything else like that. But machining Ornamental was the only one that was like, I can still do my ability, but if I want to use both of them, I have to Soul Blast a grade 3 of machining in his card name, which is a little bit understandable. So you have all 3 of these cards, and once I get to the other 2, you will realize that there is a theme where everything has to have machining in its card name. And the only time machining was ever like that was back in the day before the reboot. Everything that had machining in its card name, everything machining wise had to have it in its card name in order to use certain effects. Otherwise, you couldn't use nothing at all. So when you put all that into consideration, I feel like this is more of a premium card instead of a standard card. And to be honest, we have enough machining cards in standard format in order to justify this. But after I'm done reviewing the other 2, you'll kind of sort of see the reason why I say I would rather have this in premium than standard format. Overall, I would definitely give this card a 4 out of 5 because it does help the machining mechanic a lot. It doesn't require a cost of a counterblast and a soul blast. It doesn't retire itself at the end of the day. And you do get to call cards on the top of your deck, which means you get to save cards from your hand at the same time. So, 4 out of 5. Next up, we have our grade 2, which is a double rare, which is called Machining Scatterhorn. Auto Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When placed from hand, look at 6 cards on the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card machining in his card name, and if in his card name that is not a grade 2, put into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you put a card from your hand, into the soul. And the second ability costs act Vanguard Rearguard Circle once per turn, Soul Blast 1, and rest one of your other rear guards with machining in its card name. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and that unit cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase. Okay, this card pisses me off. For a prime example, if anybody has been listening and following everything that I've been talking about when it comes to this Megacolony Friday series, is that if there's one thing that Megacolony definitely needed, actually two things that Megacolony definitely needed, is one, a card that can call something from the hand. That can call something from the hand and put it into the soul before grade 3 turn. And the second one was something that can restand without having to be on the Vanguard Circle and without having to solely depend on Spark Hercules. Now, you have this particular card that can put a card from the hand into the soul, but you mean to tell me that in order to do it, I have to get a card with machining in his name? Why? You had one job, Bushiroad. One fucking job. And you didn't do it. You failed me. You failed every single Megacolony player here. That makes no sense whatsoever. I knew that when we got Ghidorah and we got the Cradle mechanic, that getting all of this good shit was too true. I knew we had to take an L somewhere, but I didn't think we had to take an L this hard. Come on, man. Don't get me wrong, the effect itself isn't that bad. The thing that I am pissed about is the fact that we finally get a card that can put a card from hand into the soul, and it has to be machining only. Or it doesn't have to be machining only. In order to activate it, it has to be machining only. That's not a grade 2. Why does this restriction even exist? You know what? I would have been okay with it if it said any machining card that is not machining Scatterhorn. If that was the case, it would have made this card 10 times better. But no, it just had to say no machining grade 2 whatsoever. That is complete and utter bullshit if you really think about it. I mean, come on, man. And then you have the other one that stuns one of your opponent's rear guards. Do not get me wrong. I admire that we're still having stun in standard format. But honestly, that's not the problem that I have with. What is the point of using stun, in my honest opinion, if you have the Cradle mechanic that does it 10 times better? Now, I wasn't expecting this to shit out a Cradle marker, but I think I would have appreciated the card a lot more if it would have did a Cradle marker. And again, I'm not saying that the whole stun mechanic is bad. I still like it. I still think that it has something, I still think it has some worth. But at the end of the day, I feel like that this is a little bit of a downgrade. It's a little bit of a downfall. But it's not a bad card in general. Like I said, you use this in premium format, I feel like it works 10 times better, because premium format, the stun mechanic is a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to get into. And at the end of the day, you have a lot more cards that can support it and set it up. So, at the end of the day, I feel like I will give this card a 3.5 out of 5. I'm not necessarily going to shit on the card completely, but I am still pissed. Royally pissed. Last but not least, we have Machining Metro Bullet. Costs Vanguard Rearguard Circle. If you have 5 or more rear guards, all of your rear guards and machining this card name gets boost. And act on the Vanguard Rearguard Circle once per turn. Rest one of your other rear guards and machine this card name, and this unit gets power 10k until the end of the turn. Okay, this card actually is somewhat good. I will admit this card is somewhat good. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. I feel like it's a card that you technically can't really live without, but you could kind of live without it at the same time. And I feel like standard wise, you kind of sort of don't really need this card that often, but premium format, I feel like this is where this card shines the most. Because guess what? Like I mentioned earlier, we don't really have too many cards that restands outside of using Stag Beetle. We have the Grade 1 promo, which I'm not going to remember the name at the moment, but she sucks because you can only do it from hand. And then you also have the Grade 3 order card that's going to come out in the Silver Dust set, where it's actually pretty good as well, but let's be real, it takes up a grade 3 slot. You do get to draw a card right after, but honestly, I feel like that card at most will be ran at 2, if you really think about it, because you could have like 2, you could have this card in Stag Beetle, or this card in Spark Hercules, or this card in Machining Ornamental, and honestly, I still wouldn't run that order card at 4. Honestly, because you could technically search for it, so you're not completely out of the blue. But still, I mean, this card is good. Because it gives itself it gives itself more power, which is definitely something that Megacolony like kind of needed, and it does kind of solve a couple of issues, as well as it solves a couple of issues as well as distributing power, especially if you're trying to keep everything machining like only. And it's like it has a lot of stuff that you want with it. You know, all your machining, all your rear guards and machinist carding gets boost, which means you can finally call grade 3s to the back of the, to the back row, and you can still like swing with them. Like they will still get something out of it. Like you can have the grade 3s in the back row, the grade 2s in the front row, and it's like, yo, you're still able to intercept, which is actually pretty good in my honest opinion. If you were to use like Butterfly Officer's ability, to put something into the soul, you can just put the grade 3 while you can still have something to intercept with. It's like it has everything that you want this card to have, but the simple fact that you cannot, the simple fact that there's not too many stuff that can restand other units is the thing that makes this unit semi bad. It's like it's not like a super bad unit, but it's something that I wish you can restand something. Like, oh yeah, maybe you can rest one unit and restand one unit. That still would have been fine. Even if it was just a it kind of would have been bad if it was a Vanguard only skill. But if you had something where you can stand something and rest something, it would have made it a lot better. But because of that, because of the fact that you have to force rest something, it makes no sense. Now, here's what I think is actually supposed to happen. If I look at this a little bit further, I think what you're supposed to do is rest Cyberster. He gets one of my other rear guards machinist card name in this unit. So you're supposed to rest Cyberster, choose one of your other units with machinist name. It gains plus 10k, in Metro Bullet gets 10k. And then you're supposed to call something from the top of your deck, probably over, Cyberster. You're probably supposed to call it over Cyberster, especially if it's like a grade 1 or anything else like that. That's what I believe the standard version of this is supposed to do. But it still doesn't excuse everything else. Oh my god. Like, this had everything and it dropped the ball at the last minute. So honestly, I will still actually, to be honest, I will still get this a 4 out of 5. You know, it dropped the ball on that one thing, and if it didn't, it definitely would have been a perfect 5 out of 5. But to be honest, the fact that it does contribute something to machining and it didn't leave machining hanging, I do have to give it somewhat props. But at the end of the day, after all this, we had a pretty good run with machinings. We had a pretty good run with Gun and Kaleo and Gridor and whatnot. I actually like the support. I had low expectations for the support when Megacolony was first coming out, but I think after the Gridor build, after the Gridor review, I think my low expectations went a lot higher because I was like, for the first time, Bushy Road hasn't completely screwed us over. But with that being said, I'm gonna leave you guys be for right now. See you guys in the next video. My name is Mr. Z Nation, aka Savage Armor Jones Giraffe, signing out.